What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the weekly observation of superheroes. I'm Jeremy, and I'm joined here with my team. We got Yvette, we have Crystal, we have Mark, and today we're going to give our review and our thoughts on Quantumania. All right, y'all. So I know people like to go to the movies and say, yeah, I'm not going to have any expectations, but people always have expectations. Did this movie meet our expectations?
I'm going to go no. You know what my expectation was, though, and it was death. So in that regard, it didn't. But I still liked it quite a bit. Like, I still thought it was an enjoyable time, despite that.
It was fun. I was looking forward to that. Like, you know, everybody's like, oh, yeah, Antman's going to die. I'm like, you know what? That sounds good. I like that. I'll go for that.
I wanted it so bad.
I wanted it.
Yeah.
I wanted him to die.
Like,
but death.
Like, literally throughout the movie, I was like, okay. It kept me engaged the whole time. And then when the ending came, I'm like, all right, this is the time. You're going to solidify everything by killing him off. And it's like, that's it? Okay.
I hate that they danced around it. It's like they ran up to the line, and I was like, oh, nah, I'm just kidding. Anyways, you know, everyone's still here. I feel like they need to... I guess I know we talked about this off camera, but like not kill their villains. I know Crystal loves MODOK, so I want to bring him up real quick.
Don't say that to the public because is it slander if it's my word? No, I hate that man.
MODOK was cool. I didn't want him to die. I felt like he could have been used.
Well, what else would you have used him in?
I don't know, anything. Like, we were starting to run out of villains, man.
A callback, like if he wasn't like, remember Ant-Man 1, I think they could have used him a lot more.
I mean,
I think that
like
arc made it hard.
I feel like they're repurposing them, but then they're just making them into another villain. I feel like to get to where they want to go, a reset is necessary in certain ways. There are certain characters that are not in the MCU but have such a tarnished image. Galactus is one of them. Galactus is a character. Well, because you can
still bring Galen in or Galactus in, and without doing a
Did you use his prime name? You just use his prime name. His real.
We used to go to school together. and the universe before.
That's true.
I guess for later.
that was a deep cut. I mean,
if you want to find out who Galen is, I'm just kidding. Maybe later, but
is there? Do you mind if I pose a question?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Do you think there's any character that would benefit from a reset?
I mean, I have to agree with Crystal. I don't think right now, no.
It's important. Okay.
I don't think so. I don't think there's anyone right now that I can see that would benefit from a reset. Like, we really haven't. Like, I saw somewhere on Twitter, it's like, you know, Kevin Feige kind of rolled out Marvel, and they've been hitting and going on all cylinders with like B and C tier list characters. We haven't even brought out the A list really yet.
So that's true. That is very true.
Reset, you know.
That is very true.
I hate to do this. I hate to do this, but with DC, who rolled in with their A list, and it's like, oh, okay, they didn't land quite right. Let's try this again. I can understand
which it might not work.
Reset. It makes it, you know.
That makes that's a cool perspective. That's good to see. I guess, but doesn't it kind of feel like the way they're going with like such a character that's so important to the structure of timeline and multiversal things that they could potentially go that route? Isn't Secret Wars kind of possible? Yeah. I felt like Secret Wars is kind of so I guess for my interpretation of this film, I was hoping for a hint at something that could suggest either a Secret Wars or War World or when they did Kang Dynasty, which was fantastic. I was so into that. so into that. To go back to your first question, which was like, what's your interpretation of the film and how do you like it? I would say that, and this might be controversial, without Kang, this is just Thor: Dark World.
Wow.
I know. Because I didn't feel like it was. It kind of feels like, and I'll leave you with this. It kind of feels like almost like a Indiana Jones. What's the Indiana Jones movie that has no impact on the plot? Is it the first one? Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls. Am I wrong here? Right? You understand what I'm saying? Like it doesn't feel like it has like a huge impact on the plot, but then potentially it could, depending on what happens to Kang.
I feel like this movie was like just a way to introduce Kang. They're like, all right, they touched on the quantum realm in part 1 and 2 of this, but then you had Multiverse of Madness. Like you had all these movies that like touched on the multiverse or whatever realm, but this one was like very specific. So I feel like this movie was like just made to kind of introduce Kang. You know what I mean? Like if true. Kang wasn't part of this movie, it'd be like, you know what I mean? Like, I got to see what quantum realm looks like, and like
I'm
that's
not
cool,
saying
but like nothing.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely not like a Dark World situation, but it's more like it wasn't Kang and it was just like a random villain that they were going to pick off. Like if MODOK was the main villain for some reason, it would have just been fun, but like very like okay. Which is why it feels so much like a setup for more, but not necessarily in a bad way. I don't think it takes away from the movie, because I think at this point Marvel movies are meant to be watched kind of like back to back. I don't think anyone's just going to see Antman Quantumania without having seen a couple Marvel movies already.
Yeah,
true.
So I think it puts it in that weird spot.
You made this comment, and it was just like the post-credit scenes determined how, I guess, I don't know if it was how important the movie was or how good the movie was. I think maybe how important the movie was, really.
Yeah, because it felt like the post-credit was so like, oh, okay, like this is what's coming. And yeah, I think I remember pointing out that like with Guardians, at least Guardians stood on its own, and that's why the post-credit scene didn't really have much to do with what's to come. Where it was like Howard the Duck and Cosmo, which now we're getting Cosmo, very cool. but it wasn't like, oh, these characters are coming and you have to be excited for them. It was, wasn't that a dope movie? Here's a silly little scene, where these two scenes were so vital and important that if you walked out of that theater without seeing them, you're actually like fully missing what's to come.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's true. I don't think there was.
Should be like that though.
Well, I mean, everyone stays for them. Everyone knows that you have to stay for the post credit scene. Like if you're not staying for the post credit scene, that I'm not sure if you know what movie you're watching, right? But Yvette, remember when we saw that the last end credit scene? Spoiler alert! I'm not gonna say anything. We were freaking out over it, right? And we were saying how big of a deal.
Action was based on the mid and the post credit scenes were the reason why I reacted the way I did. If those weren't there, I would have just left there like, oh, Ant-Man should have died, or they should have got trapped in the quantum. Like, I feel like they never like commit to just like offing a character. They do it to be like this hero sacrifice himself, but they don't just like kill people. You know what I mean? I feel like to make Kang this villain, it's like you got to do some drastic shit to really like cement it. I feel like.
You know what's really crazy? Now that I think about it, Ant-Man's had some of the greatest like end credit scenes. Think about it. The last one from the previous movie,
most crucial though, right? Absolutely,
most crucial. Right. Yeah. Yo, God,
I just remember the Spider-Man. It's like post-credit scenes are super important.
The Spider-Man one got me. The Spider-Man one got me. Does anyone remember the first Ant-Man movie where they were? I forget the actor's name, but they were going over like characters that can be in the film, and they were like, oh, we have a guy that jumps, we have a guy that swings, we have a guy that crawls up the walls. No one remembers that?
I remember that. It took me a minute. I was like,
that brings me back. I was like, oh my god, they have the best end credit scenes that impact the greater Marvel MCU. If I was to think about like overall end credit scenes that have impactful besides this movie and the Antman trilogy, I don't know.
I feel like sometimes for the end credit scenes though, I think it still falls back on like the end credit scenes used to be like a little treat of what's to come. Like,
thank you.
It was teeny. It would be like I'll do it myself, and you're like, oh dope, and like you kind of know what's to come, but it's not really giving anything away. Like you just know Thanos is coming eventually, and when you compare when that came out versus when we actually saw Thanos as a villain, quite a bit of movies passed in that time. And like, you know, seeing a character that's like Adam Warlock, like, oh dope, that's going to be Adam Warlock, and it's just a little sprinkle of what's to come, and it's like way later, or it's like a little hint for the next movie within that franchise of Marvel movies, where these were so vital to the plot. It almost felt like it was in the actual movie and not as post-credit scenes. Post-credit scenes, if you miss them, I think oftentimes it's like, oh yeah, it's just like a little hint that maybe we're going to see this character eventually. And sometimes you need to Google that anyway if you don't know enough about that character. Like at the end of Eternals, if you didn't know about that situation, you're just like, okay.
True.
And that required a bit of Googling. And it was a hint of what's to come. Where this was literally like heavy, important plot information.
Heavy. Super heavy.
It's almost like they should have just put it with the movie to
in the movie,
more, like value to the film itself. Because I was just, I mean, it's in the movie because it's a post credit. But I'm just, instead of making a post credit scene, just go ahead and add it in, because it's like this isn't like the treat that, you know, like Crystal says, it's like this is vital. You know, this adds so much value to the rest of the story that we just saw.
The film,
like, dang. I don't know.
Especially with all of us basically saying that those post-credit scenes kind of made the movie for us. That's a sign in itself. It probably should have been in the main movie.
The way they set up Kang, that and the post-credit scene really made the film for me. Like, I always judge a film based off of its like replayability. Like, if I'm gonna watch it again, and I just kept saying to myself after I watched that film, I was gonna watch it again just based off Kang, just to analyze how well they did. Like how well they did that character. I'm sorry, that's what made the movie form. Like, it could be called Antman Quantumania, but for me, it just could have been called Kang Origins. Like, that was just so well done.
Sometimes I wonder if it's because the actors that because, you know, like when we started the Marvel universe, it wasn't really A-list actors or like well-known actors. Where now so many people casted are these like huge names. I wonder if they're just getting way longer contracts. So it's like they gotta stay for a set amount of time. And I know that they have like a grand plan for what they want to do, but I feel like it does reach a point where we need more of them to die, and not necessarily like heroically, I guess. You know what I mean? Like how Iron Man had his very cool
to die
moment, or like, you know, with Black Widow with like very self-sacrificial. I'd say Gamora is maybe one of like the more impactful, like kind of tragic deaths of like, damn, that shouldn't have happened like that. But I think they need a little more of that. I shouldn't have to wait for the world to like basically be half over for someone to die.
That's true, man. They haven't really killed anybody off. They haven't really killed anybody off.
I think it'd be nice to see a villain that just can overpower a hero. Like Loki getting killed was upsetting, but also he wasn't this like power to behold. He was like a trickster. So I was like, yeah, like it tracks. He would get choked to death. Like, I'm not surprised by this, but I think having someone we've seen over and over again really come through and save the day, like be taken down, I think it'd be impactful and would really keep me coming back for more in a way. Like, damn, are they going to die this time?
And especially because we're talking about Kang, like he's killed Avengers. You know what I mean? He's
Oof.
killed pretty much
He killed
the
Thor.
at some point. Yeah, so it's
He
like
killed Thor. That's right.
so if he killed all these Avengers in these other timelines, how did Ant-Man get out of this alive? Or the Wasp? How did she get out of that alive, jumping back in there? You know what I mean? It's just like it just felt very unmatched.
Also, little
I'm
question.
like, yeah.
You know, for
Yes.
Kang's zappies.
Zappies, yes. No,
Like, if Ant-Man was big in that moment, he could have just synced. But I'm wondering, I don't know if it's a size thing or if it could be a certain, like, tiny. You know what I mean?
I feel like it might be like him erasing people from the timeline.
That's exactly what I figured it was.
He was saying like trillions will die. It's like it doesn't even matter. It's not going to affect anything in the grand scheme of things. And it's just like,
God.
maybe he's getting rid of like everything.
God,
Just goes to my next point real quick.
Always.
Do you guys think that King Prime is dead? I don't think so, but I want to hear what you guys
No.
think.
I don't
know. That'll be too crazy. Yeah.
I feel like Kang Prime, what he was talking about, like, yo, my variants are horrible. I see how it ends. I feel like he who remains and Kang Prime are the same people, just different times. Like, I feel like at the end of Loki, when He Who Remains was talking about like the multiverse of wars and all that, and what he did to create this one timeline and a TVA to keep it in check and destroy all the other variants, I feel like Kang Prime was pretty much saying he wants to do the same thing. I feel like they might be the same person. Just
wait.
You know what I mean? Like Kang Prime right now is going to become He Who Remains later. If that makes sense.
Yeah, especially I remember you also mentioned.
That's bugged out.
What's going on, Mark? You over here having
no, this is like the same. This is like the same thing when I found out what Woosh actually meant. Like it just blew my mind. Like if Kang Prime and the Kang that we just saw is the same, is He Who Remains the same person. They're just a part of that like greater circle. Like, is this gonna happen again? I'm gonna be the one to conquer all the Kangs and make the proper timeline. And even if it breaks, I'll just come back again.
So you're saying like they're more closely related than the rest of the Kangs are? Is that what you're saying?
They're the same.
Yeah. They're the same person.
It's
Holy
like evolution.
Oh, they are the same person.
Like Kang Prime was the person remained before. And then when they had the wars and he's like, all right, even when he was like showing in his hand, remember, I went down this crazy rabbit hole these past few days in his hand when he was talking about all these timelines and you saw the little purple circle in his hand. And at the end of Loki, when he was talking about that one timeline where it was like, you remember the little statues that were melting while he was talking? And there was him and that one circle around him. It's like, they keep going back to this like singular circle, meaning singular timeline. And they both pretty much said the same thing. So I'm like, it has to be the same person.
Yeah.
So
just
that's different days, right? I wonder, are there like, so there's just two versions of a outcome when it comes to the singularity of that one infinite timeline that's just by itself. Because when He Who Remains has it, the TVA looks like how the TVA looks. But then when he gets killed, Kang almost immediately comes into power, and it's like it's a little different. Like what is the difference between them controlling or making that timeline correct? I guess that's
something about the evolution of this Kang Prime, or at the end of Loki, when you see the statue of Kang and Loki was like freaked out seeing the statue, but Morbius doesn't even recognize him. So it's like, I feel like from the post credit, like Loki at that point, oh my gosh, like my brain is like, again, everything is a circle. So when He Who Remains was like, you can kill me now, but I'm just going to end up right back here again anyway. But maybe the path he takes to get there is a little different. You know what I mean? So when Kang Prime like disappeared at the end of Ant-Man looking like a hologram, he could have been zapped to like a slightly different timeline or something. I don't think he died. Like he definitely ended up somewhere, or maybe he even faked his death because he can see all time. So he knew what was going to happen. He might have faked it just to make them think like, hey, you defeated me, but he's ready to come back and continue on whatever he was doing to end up back at where he was.
I agree with
so
that.
It's like
I have a feeling
he already saw the Multiversal Wars, and then the end of Ant-Man is the beginning of the Multiversal Wars again.
Because he made that statement, like, you don't think I've seen this before. You don't think I know how this ends. Like right before he's like, I am Kang, and he gives that speech. I also think this is how he becomes the Beyonder, because there's this rumor that there's going to be so many variants of Kang, and one of his variants becomes one of the Beyonders from Secret Wars. So I feel like him going into that, what would you call that? The battery that he was using. I guess that energy source. It links to the multiverse some kind of way. But he kind of like gets sucked into that.
Multiversal engine, right?
That powers his time.
Multiversal engine.
I feel like when he gets sucked into that, maybe that pushes him through the multiverse in such a way that it allows him to turn into the being Beyonder of mass power, like the Beyonder.
So actually, like I remember Yvette kind of mentioning that maybe what we saw Ant-Man go through when he was in there of like being overwhelmed by possibility could also happen to Kang while he's in there. But I think that could also still lead into him becoming He Who Remains through his experience within there. But I do like the idea of like, like Yvette was saying that there's this circle that signifies time and then there's branches that imply multiverses. I wonder if that like one circle of time is definites that happen within each multiverse, and that's kind of what connects them. So even if you take certain routes, you're still going to end up on certain paths, and that's what that main thing is, which is also why he will always end up at the end, because it's like almost destined in a way that no matter which multiverse you go through for him, that's where he ends up.
Thanks for being among the amazing people to make it to the end of this video. Be sure to follow us at Woosh Studios here. Also, leave a comment on what you would like to see us talk about next.
Also, be sure to like this video if you have holes.
Peace out,
First take. That was real good.
Much.